So I think so. For the product market fit, the first thing is to embrace and accept that this is not working. This is what the hardest call I would say that you have to take. And because when you take that hardest call, you need to accept it in front of your investors, in front of your employees, and even to you as well. That's the hardest piece. You need to get over it. That okay, what I have built, although I have so much emotions attached to it, I need to see that it is not working out. It is not giving salaries to the employees. It is not giving revenues to the company. So I need to think about what's next.
Hello everyone, and that is my guest Megha Gambier, the founder and CEO of Stupasports, a global sports analytics company. She is a successful entrepreneur who left a well-paying job to start her own business. She'll share her story of how she got started with an MVP and how she grew her business to work with international federations and global clients. We'll also talk about the challenges she faced along the way, including pivoting her business model. She talks about funding. She talks about the pros and cons of working with her partner and advice for first-time founders. And finally, she talks about what should first-time entrepreneurs be focusing on, manifesting things, and table tennis tips. So please enjoy the show. Thank you. Hello, Megha. Thank you for coming on the Indian Startup Show today.
Thank you so much, Neil, for having me.
Please tell the listeners what you're building.
I'll start with a little bit of my introduction as well first, I think,
Yep.
because then you'll be able to relate what we are building. So basically, I come from a technology background, have spent 15 years in technology in different companies, service companies, and then my connection to sports actually, because what we are building is in sports technology. And my connection to sport, very interesting, is because of my husband, who has been a table tennis athlete before, spent, I would say, more than 2 decades in the sport. Started as an athlete, and then later part of his career, he was a coach for the Indian national team as well. And then I think one fine day, I decided to quit my job and to start something of my own. And I think at the same time, Deepak, my husband, was struggling with one of his major problem statement of helping the athletes to enhance their performance through objective data, and that's how the journey started somewhere in 2018 and 18, and in 2020 we founded the company. So what we do in Stupa is basically it's a company which works on sports technology and the latest technology, which is AI ML, and we use that technology to help a lot of federations in digitizing their entire operation, starting from tournament management to league management to streaming, and then to use that data as well to enhance the performance of the athletes and help the federations to work on the development of the athletes. Alongside, we also use AI for TV broadcasting and fan engagement, which basically helps in real time analyzing the matches on the go which are being broadcasted, and then that on TV with the help of TV production people, so that commentators can be more, they can build the stories around the stats, they can build the stories around the strategy, what is happening on the court, and then help the fan engagement as well.
Okay, awesome. So you started in 2018. How are things going now then? Can you share some stats?
So I think we started the proof of concept, in 2018, and it
Yeah.
was like a company we founded. We registered the company in 2020. And unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know what to say, but I think February we registered, and March, we were hit by COVID. And it was a very tough time for us because in between 2018 to 2020, we were working on figuring out, what needs to be built and what exactly is the problem statement in the market and so on. And when 2020 we founded the company, we were trying to solve a problem statement for the players where we wanted to help them in analyzing their performance through video analysis. That was basically we started with, but unfortunately, like I said, we were hit with COVID, and then 2 years we were working on the similar product. Still, we were able to work with a lot of international athletes in table tennis. At that point in time, we were working with 40 plus international athletes, with working with the lot of athletes who were participating in Tokyo Olympics as well. All of was very satisfied with our performance, But I think this is a very interesting part in our journey, which basically that we started with a vision of helping the athletes, but then we have to, pivot into a different business model and a strategy altogether, because the initial 2 years, 2020, 2021, we figured out that although we are trying to solve a bigger problem for the players to help in enhancing their performance, but it is a proper consumer market, may not scale the way we want to have this business scale in next couple of years. And that's basically, then I would say a journey of a product market fit started, because we were already in touch with a lot of federations and a lot of players and so on. They helped us in, figuring out what exactly is the problem they are facing in the market. And that was basically lying into the B2B business, which is basically, I would say, the federations, leagues, and organizer of the tournaments and the events. That's where we found our moat as well, that currently in the market, there are a lot many players who are doing tournament management, live streaming, and maybe AI, but no one is doing an aggregated solution. And federations were struggling because while they are dealing with lot many different platforms, there is an ample amount of data leakage happening at every step. Where I think we found our USP, and we started working on this B2B side of the business, which was a pivot happen in 2022 in our business. And then from there on, we actually became a pure B2B company, then B2C. And since after that, I think it's always has been an onwards and an upwards journey for us, because we have partnered with 15 plus global federations, worked with a lot of international, and marquee clients in table tennis as well. And then we expanded our portfolio now in other.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, let's go back to the start then. He's mentioned proof of concept. What did the first MVP look like?
The only problem which we wanted to solve was to give the data to the athletes on way they are performing, and we really started with very, very basic, and our MVP was in Excel. We were manually annotating the data from the videos. We had some data annotators who were, noting down the data in an Excel format, and then
that must have taken a long time to do.
Yeah, one match of, close to one, I would say an hour was taking 6 to 8 hours for us to annotate and then come out 6 to 8 hours just to annotate, and then we have to derive a lot of analysis on top of it. We were using very basic graphs and so on. So that was our first MVP. And the thing is that when we did this, then the next step was we started using Tableau, like a Power BI kind of a tool to, showcase the data in a right format. And with that itself, we figured out that this becomes an amazing thing for the players. I mean, they were very, very happy to see that, okay, now they're able to at least see where they have been losing the points, where exactly they've been pitching the balls, what are the strategies of the opponents, where, I would say most of the serves are landing, receives are landing. These insights were very, very useful for them. And this itself, this POC itself, we submitted to ITTF, which is the international body for table tennis, in their Sports Science Congress. To our surprise, they called us in their Sports Science Congress to present this, because by the time nothing like this was existing. Even this Excel Tableau work was so exciting for them. And they said that, this should be the area to, work on and create a lot of data hub the players and so on.
Did you get any negative feedback?
Yes, and these are the people who are actually the coaches.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we were trying to help the athletes and help, of course, the coaches to, I would say that to help them in basically fast tracking their work while the coaches are making notes and then analyzing the things by watching the videos. Once the matches are over, we were trying to shorten their time and giving the right objective data to them. But I have seen not all, but many of the coaches were very, very traditional and was of a mind that we are trying to replace them. Players may not need the coaches if we bring on this data. And that's basically the struggle we have also dealt with, and to which we did a lot of, campaigns and we worked with a lot of federations to do the awareness as well. With ITTF also, we worked on a lot of awareness programs where we were coaching the webinars for the coaches to make them understand this is to basically help them in fast tracking their process of understanding an athlete's game rather than slowing them down or maybe replacing them. That's what we have also faced during that time.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Any advice for our listeners on building an MVP or a prototype? What should they be focused on? Is it purely speaking to as many people as possible, or coming up with different types of proof of concepts and validating them?
I would say, if you have something in your mind, the first step is to just begin with it. Whatever it is. It can be as basic as it can be. You just need to begin with it and start talking to your customers and showing them how much they are keen in what you have been doing, because that time when we were doing it, we realized that, and that was our motivation factor to move forward as well, because we have realized that this very basic work and simple work is exciting to lot many people. And what if we, completely digitize it and completely, use technology for this? So I think the first and foremost step to take is to, execute it as whatever basic it can be. And then I think to also provide that MVP in a way that it is understood by the customers. I mean, we used graphics, or we used graphs to basically show how athletes can be improved. So that part, the interface which is being consumed by the users, is very, very important. If you are
Mm.
trying to build something and if you have been working on it and you feel that the customer can understand and get into your shoes and understand what you are trying to give, will never happen. First learning we have got is that you need to actually show, or create that kind of an interface where consumer can understand what can lead to and what, I mean, it can help.
Yeah.
That's the, I mean, major part, I think, what we have also realized. And second thing, like I said, that I think it's always good to begin and talk to as many people as you can, because I would say where I have been now in last 4 years of the company and the way the company has grown, it's all because I have always been talking to lot many people, customers, even I mean, I would say I've had a lot of good advisors and mentors as well in my journey who have helped me sharpening my thought process around it. And
Mm.
that's very important, because when you meet people, when you talk to people, and maybe that could not be the agenda which you wanted to speak, but when you're talking to people, there are a lot many things that comes just as an idea to you, and that you can go back and, I mean, note it down and reflect on it. I feel a power of networking and speaking to customers and to anyone who's, I mean, relatable or maybe irrelatable to the industry as well, is good to speak with and get your, I mean, their perspective, and
Mm.
their perspective can be helpful to you in some different ways.
Mhm.
These are my biggest learnings.
Advice from our sort of listeners on pivoting.
Yeah, and I see, I mean, I would say that I did the pivot when I have raised, a seed round. After
Okay.
that, I
Yeah.
was already having a group of, or a set of very good marquee investors, angel investors on my cap table. And after that, I pivoted. And it was not a tough call to pivot, because the existing business was not making that kind of revenues which we were expecting. And the pivot was again a risk as well. I would say that we focused on what exactly is the need of the market. We started to listen, I mean, the things under the wrap itself from the people who were talking about what they need. So the two things which we realized, which was, I would say, now our vision and mission for the company as well, is basically that the federations were struggling to have the data in place. And the second is that they were struggling to make money out of it. And we made this as our motto, that we need to solve this. And in that journey, there has been lot many different steps we have taken on what product to be built and how we have to start with a new product, what could be the right pricing strategy, and what could be the right business model, so that we meet the customers. And I feel that product market fit, I mean, is a journey itself. And in this journey, you need to be very closely working with your customers, because, and for me and for us, I would say in Stupa, Sweden as a federation was our one of the key customer who helped us in understanding the market itself, understanding the pain of the federations, what they are running through,
Mm.
and also understanding what it can lead to if, for example, we build something what, I mean, they are looking forward to, and how that problem is very relatable to most of the federations, just in not in table tennis but in other sports as well. So I
Mhm.
think, so for the product market fit, the first thing is to embrace and accept that this is not working. This is what the hardest call, I would say, that you have to take. And because when you take that hardest call, you need to accept it in front of your investors, in front of your employees, and even to you as well. That's the hardest piece. You need to get over it, that okay, what I have built, although I have so much emotions attached to it, I need to see that it is not working out. It is not giving, salaries to the employees. It is not giving revenues to the company. So I need to think about what's next. And then the second step basically focuses on how this product can be evolved into a product which can be a right fit for the market. And I feel, I think lot many people who have just starting up and getting into this entrepreneurial journey, it's really, really important to understand the customer pain point and the problem. Because when you are trying to solve it, then it becomes much easier for you to sell also. So if, for example, I wanted to solve the digitization part of the federations, but
Mm.
I'm not solving it as a digitization. Digitization could be a good to have thing for them, but what I'm trying to solve is that how they can make money from data and media. This is my core motto, that how federation can be more, I mean, monetizing their data and media, can become more independent of the grants they receive from the government or the money they receive from the players, and how they can spend very wisely on the development of the sports itself, because those are the core areas they need to work on. And I started to connect the platform. And in fact, I mean, Deepak and I, we worked very, very deeply on it, that how we connect the platform with these core areas which they want to achieve. When we started to do that, I think it was then, I mean, a smoother journey for us, when we realized that, okay, now our first priority is to understand the customer and help them in making or achieving what they want. And then rest is, I mean, rest is history, I would say, because then it becomes much smoother, because our acceptance toward what will work in the market was much more. And then how we have to enable this for the federations, or how we have to enable this for the customers, became much more easier for us.
How long did it take you to get your first sale then?
But an easy process at all, I mean, we pivoted in the month of in 2021 last quarter, which was around January 2020, December 2021. And then in the first quarter of 2022, we already started working on the new product, and I already started to travel and talk to the customers about the new product which we are bringing on in somewhere around March. And I was able to close my first deal in the month of June. So it took me like close to, I would say, 8 to 12 weeks to first deal. That too, I would say, is another story, because when you are actually coming from product which is not being, which is not being sold in the market, and so your confidence level of selling something else becomes very low. And as a founder, I feel that at one point in time, you have to be very good in of course, building and other things. But I don't think that you can escape a quality of selling by yourself.
Yeah.
Because the conviction which you will have on the product, a salesperson may not be able to do that justice. I think that when after pivot, I was trying to do the sale. The bigger battle I was struggling with is that I was not confident enough that I will be able to make this sale. And I still remember that I had to go to Brazil, and it was quite far from India, 27 hours of travel I needed to do, because they were very keen to have this product I've been talking. But most of the deals or the B2B partnerships happens when you meet people and talk to them, and go out, sit with them, and talk a lot more about other things than just the business. That's my another learning, actually. But when this trip was happening, it was a lot of money also for us at that point in time, because we were running out of funds and we had to make sales and so on. So this Brazil trip was very tough for me at that point in time, because I was thinking to save money, and I didn't know that whether I'll be able to make the sale or not. And then my husband Deepak pushed me that, even if we will not try, then how would we understand that whether we are able to make this sale or not. So in any ways, you need to go out and talk to people and sell it. So that push and motivation at that point in time, which Deepak gave me to overcome my low confidence on sales at that point in time, has helped me a lot, because I went there and I converted that deal, and then I came back, and it gave me a lot of confidence. And right after that, I one by one I started to close my deals. And since then till now, we are working with lot many different clients, federations.
What about cost then? Because obviously, could that be an issue as well? Obviously, you've got hardware, software. Someone needs to train you up on it as well.
In terms of, if you talk about the cost, because it's a technology product and it works on cloud, so our gross margins are very nice. It's not that the major cost which we have is basically in building the product.
Okay.
The maintenance of the product is not too high. But the thing is that, I'll tell you one more interesting thing, is that our product wasn't ready when I made the first sale, and even subsequently after that as well. So that's also one of the things that you constantly need to focus on, that you are seeing the interest from the market, and still lot many things are under under development. So that piece also, that how you basically still carry that confidence, and also take the product in the market in a way that, okay, it is in there, and then you show them the worth of it. It becomes much easier after to close the deals.
What's it like working with your husband?
Okay, that's not an easy question actually to answer. So, see, me and Deepak, we of course know each other from almost 18 years, because we have been into one same college, same class, and we've done love marriage, and we've dated 7 years before we got married, and I think his focus and his career completely in sports, my career completely in corporate. There are lot many things where we complement each other, but there are lot many things where we are just, doesn't work the way we work in our sectors. So sports is a different sector, and the way of working there is very different vis-a-vis in a corporate sector. So I would say, I'll be very honest, I mean, with you, and I think, honest to the people who are going to listen this as well. But I think uh, it has pros and cons both. I'll tell you first about the pros. The thing is that the amount of confidence and the trust and the motivation and the depth you can share with each other, I don't think that, I mean, that is basically required in a co-founder, I mean, to be shared with. If you are too good friend to your co-founder, or if you are too good, connected with a co-founder, it's really, really important, because the depth of the things, the nature on how you react on certain situations, or how the other person reacts, and it may or may not be right at always at all, I mean, all time. So it's very important to understand the nature of the people, and it's also understand to basically go to the depth of the things, and share that's perspective I feel that was very much comfortable in between me and Deepak, because we share a very good bond, and
Mhm.
I mean, are like friends as well. And anything where I feel low, he motivates me, and when he feels low, then I motivates him. So that's how we try to complement each other. But on the other side, we have had so many different fights. I can't tell you, because I think, and we still fight, but now we have learned on how to, agree to disagree. At times when you are do not agree to each other, you really need to draw a line. What would be the decision, and where exactly that decision would be, and who will be taking that decision. So that's a journey we have lived. Initially, we fought a lot, and then later point in time, we realized that this is not going to go anywhere. We were shouting at times at each other in the room, and people were listening outside in the room. Okay, that the founders are fighting, but I think that's a part of journey. We also now realize that what works and what doesn't work. Where are the areas where he has to focus on, and where he has a final decision, and where are the areas where I have a final decision and he will not, surpass that. And then accordingly, we tend to, share our responsibilities. We do still have our disagreements, but we have learned, and we are still learning to agree to those disagreements.
Agree to disagree. Sounds like a recipe for a good marriage there. You mentioned career break. That's interesting.
It wasn't like an overnight decision. So I'll tell you, and this is a very interesting part of my life itself, I would say. So I have been always in corporate sectors, working as initially as developer, and then managing the projects, managing the accounts and technology piece, and then I worked with some product companies like Amex and PepsiCo as well. And at a I don't know, I mean, I was having this very internal feeling, which I was not able to recognize until I would say in 2017, that it is I mean, too loud at that point in time, that I had to leave. But from somewhere around 2014 and 15, actually 2014, when I actually was pregnant with my first child as well, at that point in time, there was a very strong feeling in my mind that where I mean, whatever I'm working in my corporate career at the moment, and that time I was, working as a manager or something, I was just not finding my peace in there, and I did not know that what I don't like, but I was on a maternity break in 2015 for a year. And that point in time also, I started to do some businesses on my own, because it just happened. I started to work with my friend and did not work out. Then I started something else with my another friend. It
Mhm.
didn't work out. So I started something in that maternity break as well. But I did not know that what is not making me feel good about when I'm, in my job. And then I went back after my maternity break in job again in 2016. And this thought become prominent and prominent, that I'm not happy. Why? I didn't know. Actually, I didn't know that what is making me unhappy. And 2017 December was a time when I felt that maybe I was very near to, like, a depression, because my health went down. I got typhoid because of my stress. I got lot many different health issues, and I was,
Mhm.
sick for month and a half. And it was the health was deteriorating because not because of the work pressure. Of course, I mean now also I, work for 16 hours, or it's work pressure was not a problem, but I was not feeling content. I was not feeling happy, and the reason was completely unknown to me. And somewhere I think in 2017, when I was not feeling good and my health was deteriorating, I just started yoga. And I don't know, at that point in time I figured out that leaving a job right now should be a best thing, and then I'll figure out what I want to do next in my life. um, Fast forward after 2 years, I think I started working on the new concept. But
Mhm.
at that point in time, I knew that I want to do something of my own. This is not my calling, what I was doing in my job. I felt probably that I I am not being utilized to my full potential, what I have in my job. And maybe that was making me feel uncomfortable, and so on. So it was a very hard call for me to take a break or take a sabbatical at that point in time, because my partners in EY were not happy that I'm doing this without knowing what I want to do next in my life. And I was also very unhappy with my decision at that point in time, because I did not know what I want to do next. But I thought that okay, I'll figure it out. And I was so scared as well, because I was thinking that at that point in time, if I am not able to find something, I have to go back, I'll be again 2 years or 1 year slower than my, colleagues or my peers. That fear also was a lot, that I'll be then not able to make that, growth. So, but still, I think again, my husband and my sister at that one time pushed me to just take this decision and take a break. And then I started, traveling, and I did a little bit of blogging. I did trekking. I traveled a little bit solo, and my
Mm.
husband took care of my daughter at that point in time, because I just needed me time to figure out what I want to do next in my life. And then this happened, 2018. We started to just I just started to help my husband in solving his problem. That's
Mhm.
how, because I was free, and I thought that okay, I'll just help you in analyzing the performance of the players. And then I found it very interesting, and it just caught my interest, and I figured that could be sports technology could be a big thing. And then we founded the company. And just to add one thing here, when we started the company, literally the thought was not this, that we will make this like a big company in a way that will raise funds, this and that. We wanted to
Mm.
set up like good company which can help Indian athletes in solving their performance, and so on. That was the only purpose we started. But I think slowly I've built that mindset of how we can take this big, and not giving up at lot many areas where we have were very near to break down, or very near to give up. That's how it has come. It was all like a journey. And I would say that then and now I've seen a lot of difference in my entire personality. I was not a same. I was not the same person where I was, and I know why that calling was
Mhm.
happening in 2017. Because, like I said, that I was not being utilizing my full potential, and that was something I now can recognize. But at that point in time in 2017, I was not able to recognize that this is the reason I'm not feeling so good.
In terms of the sports analytics scene, it's absolutely huge. Pretty much every sport has it now. What's the scene like in India then?
Yeah, and I'll be very honest and candid on this as well, that we started the company with the vision that we want to help Indian ecosystem in sports technology.
Mhm.
But our entire revenue right now, the business comes from outside India.
Mhm.
90% of our business is from the global federations and so on. Currently, right now, also, for example, I'm in Germany, and we work with European federations a lot. The thing is that what I have figured out in India is that I think at 2020, it was not a market then for India, for sure. But now in 2024, I see a lot of opportunity in the Indian market about AI and analytics in sports as well.
Mm.
And that is just not for the professional athletes. I think for them it's a must have, but even for the amateurs and recreational or leisure players as well.
Mm.
And this is what our next product, which we are launching right now, where we are making courts, as a smart courts.
Mm.
Basically, maybe someone who's playing for a leisure. Imagine you go and you just scan the QR code and you turn on the cameras, and you,
Mm.
once you're done, you'll be able to get all of your highlights, very good, nice statistics, and other things, which they can then distribute the content on the social media and so on. So we I think in these 4 years we have not focused, although we wanted to only focus on Indian market, but we realized that the market wasn't ready at that point in time. And secondly, it's also was not, high paying market as well.
Yeah.
Now I think, given that we have already set our business globally and we are expanding in a very good way, we feel that now is the time we have to start focusing on the Indian market as well. And we are already working with some private partners, and now trying to work with, Indian ministry and some of the federations, and making them aware first about digitizing their ecosystem, helping the athletes in analyzing their performance. Because nowadays, with the vision of India also, hosting, say, Youth Olympics or Olympics in future, and a lot of work being done by government on the sports as well, I see India is going to be the next big market for the sports technology. But what is the paying capacity is again, I would say, another, I mean, question mark. It will evolve, because I've seen India consumers now started to pay where they see value,
Mm.
and now they will start seeing value in the technology as well, as a player, as an athlete, or maybe as a leisure or an amateur player as well, and then they'll start to pay for such things.
Mm.
So I think next 5 years are going to be very, very crucial for Indian market in sports technology, and I think good that Stupa has literally, lived its journey for last 4 years. So now we are ready for the Indian market as well.
Awesome stuff. Can you give me some like tips for our table tennis amateur players? Then can you give us some sort of analytics, on the serve, or perhaps, or what the key performance indicators?
Yeah, I'll not try to keep it, focused only on table tennis, because now we work with other
Mhm.
sports as well: tennis, paddle, badminton, and pickleball, and so on. And the key, I mean, performance indicators, I think the first and foremost is to start recording your data. I mean, that's something, is the basic thing that anyone needs to do. That you need to, I mean, you need to start capturing your data and record it. That exactly, I mean, when you're training or when you're playing the matches, then say what kind of serves you're using, what kind of placements you're using when you're serving, what exactly of I mean, the place from the table or from the court you are losing most of the points, which are the movements which are making you slow to move around into the court. So those pieces can be then worked in your fitness training sessions, because then you understand that, okay, these are the movements where I'm making most of the errors while playing to the opponents and so on. So the first and foremost is to start basically collecting the data points, and then thereafter is basically analyzing the data points. And these data points, like I said, could be talking about and in most of the racket sports, the first four balls are very important. I mean, starting from serve, receive, and the third ball and the fourth ball, because if you're not able to keep the ball on the court in the first four balls itself, the rally is not gonna, continues. And your strategy towards basically enabling the opponent to lose a point will not happen. So the first focus is to basically have focus on your serves and receives, and where you are landing them, and how you are basically returning the opponent's serve as well. And that's the first basic thing also we started to analyze in our data for the athletes, with which they were able to make a lot of improvement, because people usually feel that they need to focus on the strokes, but the way you start your point is really, really important. How confidently you're starting a game, and you're starting a point with the strategy, that where you have to place the serve with a lot of combinations in mind. And if, for example, opponent is serving you, then how you're returning. And the third thing is that you need to know your opponents. It's really, really important. And I think as an athlete, most of us misses that. We go by a lot which is there in our mind, which is basically presuming or having some perceptions about the athletes and about their game, about our game as well. So it's really important to, objectify the data of opponents as well, and understand actually how does they react, I mean, how does they react on a deuce situation, for example.
Mm.
When there is a deuce, what kind of a serve they will be putting onto you, or whenever they are down, they are trailing, at that point in time what kind of serves they use, or what kind of physical um, actions people are taking when they are I mean, very highly motivated, or not that motivated as well. So it's important to understand your opponents as well, and that's the third piece which we tend to do in our analysis, that analyze the opponents, I mean, through the data points and even through physical data points as well, and then help the athletes to play, because ultimately when you're playing, it's more about winning, I mean, it's just
Mm.
about winning, I would say. So
Mhm.
how you get to win is basically what is the control you have on your performance, and what is the control you can actually get on your opponent performances. These are important factors.
It seems everything's going to be data driven now.
Yeah, I believe completely, because I feel that I mean, I'll just take a small example, I mean, your day-to-day dietary requirements, people have started to note it down, I mean,
Mm.
what calories they are taking and how many calories they are burning, and then, I mean, they are even tracking their footsteps, their and that helps you. I mean, it's just not that they are doing it for fun also. Like I also, for example, track my entire, fitness routine and how much calories I have to burn every day. So I keep a track of all these things. These data points helps you in making a right decision, and right calling. For example, if I've done enough calories for today, I may not be able to, eat something which I probably want to eat for today. So it's important to have these data points, because these helps you in taking a right decisions. And that's what I feel, that the way, I mean, AI coming into the picture, and then the Gen AI is also now coming, and the use of technology in terms of smartwatches, phone, and the capacity of phones are getting increased. I feel that a lot many things, not lot many, I think everything is going to be data driven, and that is required as well. I mean, most of the business decisions, most of the even decisions by the consumer businesses, where they want to understand their consumers, their behaviors, most of the banking decisions, most of the other industry decisions are completely based on the data, because that helps you decide the pattern, the behavior, and that gives you more insights about I mean, on which you can make decisions. There's nothing harm, in knowing things about a particular thing, and even if it's the same use case in sports as well, it's no harm to know more about your opponent, about your athletes as a federation, about their performance, and then you can then focus on the actual right direction, rather than
Mm.
on a very diverse and a segregated manner, which doesn't have any direction. So
Mm.
I am a firm believer of AI, and of also data and analytics. But yeah, I mean, I also feel that it has to put to use in a right manner, and that's what I think is a responsibility of all human beings as well.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Last few questions. You mentioned funding before. Talk about that process. How long did it take?
So I would say that my fundraising capacity, or even the capabilities have grown, or have evolved over the period of time, you know. And I think the first round when I raised, which was seed round in 2021, I think that has taught lot many things to me. And usually it starts with pitches, but just one advice to people I do want to give is that it is always good to have mentors and advisors, who are from the industry, and help them in carving out what should be the right pitch, and how an investor look at it. Again, I'm going back to the same theory of what a consumer wants. And in this case, a consumer or a customer, I mean, could be an investor, where what exactly he would like to listen from you, what is your vision, how will you make it big. I think those are the pieces. Honestly, I mean, when I started raising funds, I did not know. And I took help of my then advisor at that point in time. Very, very phenomenal Aman guy. And he supported me in understanding what needs to be pitched, how needs to be pitched. And I took from there, and then I started to pitch through slides, and then, of course, show some wireframes and demos on what we wanted to do, because not everything was ready at that point in time. And I think that's not the even expectation as well when you're doing the seed rounds, and when you, of course, doing a pre-series or something, at that point in time, you, of course, have to have some MVP ready, or some product even also ready.
Mm.
You need to have like a PMF, product market fit, also established. But at the first initial level, the investors also want to focus on your vision, your growth, how you are thinking about the business. And it's okay to not have all the answers at the beginning. But you constantly, I think, whenever you are pitching, whatever questions are being asked, you need to take note of them and you need to, start thinking about it. It should not happen that you are, constantly talking to the investors and your pitch remains every time same. So whenever, I used to pitch whatever inputs I've received and that investors, for example, have said no, I figure out that what wrong I did in this pitch and how I can improve it. So every pitch needs to be an improvised version of the last one, and every pitch needs to be more, prepared from the last one, which helps you basically understanding the pulse of the investors as well on what exactly they are looking at. So I think that's important. And I think from the product perspective, I feel that if you have a good idea, you have some wireframes or MVP also ready, it is good. But if you do not also have, I think it is important to show how you are going to get there. If you know the roadmap, if you have the clarity how you're going to go there, then I think it should work perfectly fine. I think you should be the person who should be, as a founder, should be doing, going through each and every part of it, understanding deeply about your markets, your customers, as deep as you can go, so that whenever they have any questions, you should be able to answer. And if you do not have answers, you should have that curiosity to understand that, okay, probably I need to go back and reflect and work on it.
What was the main question they asked you then?
See, I think the first and the foremost thing is that how big is the market, and what is basically we are trying to solve. These are the two main questions I've seen always have been coming from the investors. That how big is the market? You of course need to analyze and research as well from your secondary resources or maybe primary resources to figure out that what is the TAM, and because the TAM gives them a perspective that how big this business can become. And second, that is what you're trying to do is actually a problem or not. If it's not a problem, and if it is probably a good to have thing as well, but even that good to have thing requires a little bit of a time, for people to for example, I'll just quickly talk about online shopping. When online shopping came into the picture, it was not like a problem per se. It was basically a change of era itself, where people have shifted from offline shopping to an online shopping, and it wasn't easy. Lot many people still do not want to do online shopping because they more feel comfortable when they see look and feel of the things. So that shift in the mindset of the people, also can be there, and it may not be always a problem, but it is a shift of mindset of people from going from A to B. So I think those pieces are very important for you, that you're trying to solve a problem or you're trying to build something which is basically a mindset shift for the people, because we are evolving into a new space of AI and so on. So that helps the investors also to understand that where exactly this business will land in next 5 years. So TAM, and of course the problem what you're trying to solve is something important questions. And then after that, of course, I feel that founders and their clarity is the third most important thing, because if you have a right market, if you have a right product, and even like I said, when I started to raise, I was not having a right product in place, because that was not a right product, which I've realized after taking funding and so on. But the third part, which is very important, which I told you, that how much clarity and what is basically the resilience you have. And if that is there in you, the grit, the resilience, then I think the investors also know that you'll be able to build something or the other. Even if you're not able to crack something here, but you'll be able to figure out how to still navigate and get to where you have to. So I think these three important pieces are there, which I have seen have been in always very standard in my pitches. And yeah.
Awesome stuff. What excites you most about what you're doing?
This is so I think I also don't know what excites me, but I think the passion of solving something for the federations, and making them feel that what they want to achieve is they have achieved through us is one of the important things currently, I mean, I feel very passionate about, because I really want to fix this. And when you are in a path of fixing something, when you're in a path of, achieving something in a way where, I mean, you feel that this can, disrupt the industry or disrupt the way people have been doing, that thought itself, bring a lot of passion and lot of motivation towards you. The other part I would say, and I'll be very honest, I've also struggled a lot financially in my in my past, years as well, because of financially I was not that very strong. So I always wanted to also have a money angle as well in my career.
Yep.
I think that's also another factor of motivation for me now. It may not be the factor in future when I will achieve that, but I'll be very, very, very candid that I wanted to make more money, and that's also the second reason why I started up, or I figured out what I need to do, and that's another thing which I'm doing. But I think when you are building something, the I would say the AD rush you have at the same time of building something and people, acknowledging it, is gives you another level of high. And that high is basically makes me more, motivated to keep on working, and keep resolving, keep helping, and trying to do, something which is basically going to change the way people are literally developing the sports in the industry.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. What advice would you give our first-time founders?
I think most important two things. One is the resilience, because I think lot many things will be variables, lot many variables will be there in your journey, and there will be lot of amount of time, and I'm literally having goosebumps when I'm saying all this, because this comes with a lot of because I've been there. There has been lot many times when you really don't feel motivated in the morning, and you wake up and you don't know how you can face your employees, or maybe how you face yourself, because you have so much uncertainty and you don't know where to go. But I think what helped me was resilience, and also mind training on how I can achieve things. I've always been a strong believer on manifesting and writing affirmations. And wherever I have low confidence and I feel that something cannot be done and I don't know how it has to be done, I start to write those things and write in a past tense that I have achieved this. So that trains my mind itself and helps my mind itself to come out of that particular phase when I'm into that, and that helps in building more resilience. So I would say that the first advice is to have a resilience in you, and focus on as much uh, training you can do to your mind to have more positive, and be a firm on your what you're doing, and have that confidence on how you can achieve it, because even if you don't know how it has to be done, you'll be able to do it. Universe will help you to get there, if you have that grit in you. So that's the first advice I would give, and that's a mindset change people need to do, on their own itself, because you get so much negativity and other things. And the second advice is that it's really, really important to have a very good network of people, mentor, advisors, because I feel that when you are at a level and you are talking to a people who are, even 50% above you, or 30% above you in the intel or in the intellect, or even in the experience and journey as well, it gives a lot of perspective to you from where you can learn and work on. So I feel that I have been very blessed and fortunate to have picking up right mentors in my life, and picking up right advisors in my life, and I have literally not given any unimportance to speak to them, to go and meet to them at any point in time when I feel needed, because it is really, really important to meet, to speak to people, and to speak to your mentors, and go out and network, because that gives a lot of value addition and other perspective to you, and your mind, which is very deeply working on something, on your product, on your right market fit, or maybe on sales, but those different perspectives helps you in connecting the dots. So these are two important things what I feel are important. And
Mhm.
resilience doesn't come in the first part. The resilience doesn't come on its own. You really need to build it. So that's these two things: resilience and of course right mentors and advisors.
Awesome stuff. Right, last question then for people who want more information on Stupa Sports Analytics and yourself. What must they do?
They can so they can actually go to the website stupaanalytics.com, or maybe they can write on LinkedIn, and or maybe I think they can write directly to me as well on my email. So that would be the right way of connecting.
Awesome, Megha. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Neil, for having me.